process, to just say to undertake an investigative process with the province to investigate the opportunity to have Saanich landscape / create public arts / create an opportunity for Saanich recognition in that particular piece of property. I don't see the value of potentially going back again and again and again, but I also recognize not wanting to make it so it's easy just to say no to everything. So I guess the question of the mover is a subsequent motion for another time, or a subsequent motion that would be therefore 2 letters sent forward?
I think at this stage, if I look at the recommendation, we're trying to figure out how to engage the province and what to ask. And I don't want to stop you, but I think maybe when that report comes back, that would be a good time to actually craft that into a more detailed motion. Right now we're starting with a report from Director Derman that is it's somewhat prescriptive, but I know he's had some talks with engineering and some maps have been detailed. We need to take that a step, but it's your prerogative.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think if they're going to be open to that, they'll be open to something else later. So I'm fine with it. And it's unfair for me to spring it. I just have always, as I suspect many of us have, driven by there and thought, we should put something there. Something that says, this is Saanich.
Thank you. From a staff time point of view, I think it makes sense to me that we get kind of a conditional go-ahead, I think, to then ask some more questions rather than to task staff with doing that work and then just having a no from it.
Sure.
That's,
I'm fine.
all right, thank you. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this has the potential for being really quite an exciting project, but I sort of sense that our sort of making little jabs at it sort of trivializes it. Rather than this being, something that goes to the advisory committees, then gets a response from engineering and then goes on, I would far rather we planned ahead, put this area in a future strat plan, the areas that we wanted to adjust ourselves as a municipality, plus those that we wanted to engage the ministry with. So we had a proper vision for this area, and then that went forward. Somehow talking about closing lanes or changing lanes or whatever, to me that might just not be quite hitting what we need to do in that whole area of Blanchard and Verdon, including the Nigel Valley, including what may or may not happen in that whole commercial complex where the Save On Foods is, plus the abutting highways. To me, it's kind of, to just sort of have it kind of go one off down the track. I know that Councillor Derman has given a lot of thought to this area. I would far rather, as a council, that we put this in a proper context and make it a piece of serious work, because just sort of tacking it on to the work that engineering has already done, we can fire a letter off to the ministry, but I don't think that's going to accomplish much. I don't think it's really going to do a lot for the area. I'd rather it be given a little more featuring.
Thank you. Next on my list is Councillor Haynes and then Councillor Sanders. I've got it first. Go ahead, Councillor.
That gave me pause for thought listening to Councillor Bryce, and I would invite the mover to reflect on some of those points, because I was understanding that this would be going forward in the context that Nigel Valley is also coming forward under another piece of work. But your suggestion is then to integrate it into one big piece? If I may, through the mayor. Just for clarification on this suggestion.
If you wish to respond.
Nigel Valley is obviously out there. We've not made any determinations as a council as to how we're going to maximize the livability, the pedestrian component, the whatever, to link Nigel Valley to that other huge piece of real estate. I think it's probably more comprehensive than that.
Okay, so I'll speak further if I may. I think the recommendation to send it to advisory committees and to ask them for the feedback and then the engineering department to review all comments and prepare a report seems to me a reasonable way to go after a size of project that the province may agree to. Now, I've not put projects forward to the province before, but I get that point that maybe it's easier to get a small win than a big win around a more complicated process. And there's a time factor as well. What would be the time for getting a win on a project this size versus a much larger project? And I think one of the elements that has appeal here is that this piece of road would benefit from some changes. Now, at the most recent PTED, we had a group come to talk to us that was involved with placemaking. One of the initiatives they do is they take a piece of streetscape and they put some changes in place for a half a day or for a month, where they would actually change the traffic flow or change the people flow. And this may be an opportunity to get some input on the changes that are suggested here in a low-cost way that would allow an actual proof of concept of the suggestions from Councillor Derman. And maybe that's one of the feedbacks that would come back here to try this, to do a place-making change that would provide a proof of concept. So I think these are novel ideas that could be tested and then sent forward to the province to increase the value of them. So on that basis, I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders, waiting patiently.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm afraid I'm with Councillor Bryce. I would like to see it more as a bigger, more wholesome project working with the ministry. I think our engineering department has countless number of plans in the works, and this isn't something that we can just throw on, separate, I think, from the bigger context. So I'm afraid that I don't support this going away forward as this, but I would support it as being part of a bigger look at the whole area and become a larger project. I also want to touch on the public art, and that the Arts Cultural Heritage Committee have looked at public art, but again, in the bigger context of the whole municipality, not in one area in particular, but looking at where there's a need and such. So it's not something that we haven't been talking about. But, so anyway, that's my feeling on the project.
Thank you. Councillor Derman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to respond to the concerns about a bigger project. And certainly, if there's anything I'm in favor of, it's large-scale, long-term visionary planning. There's no question about that. But that, in this case, this is a ministry road. It belongs to the ministry. We can't make changes on it ourselves without asking them. In the long term, we want to have a plan for the shopping center, where Save On Foods now exists. We want to have a plan for the whole area. We want to have a plan for the Douglas Corridor. All those things are important, but they are much in the longer term. This doesn't stop any of those things from happening. It takes an advantage of the fact that we have two very aggressive roads there, Vernon and Blanchard, that are detrimental to creating the kind of environment that we're trying to create in this part of Saanich. We have a provincial group who are likely to make application to the ministry to be able to include in their project the closing of part of a lane on the other side that is similar to the lane that I'm talking about on this side. The changes would not be hugely expensive because it's a matter of something that is already asphalt and moving from there. And nor would they be permanent, necessarily. They are the kind of thing, you're not putting buildings on them, you're not doing anything else. You can make a substantial improvement in the short term that doesn't preclude any larger, more visionary improvement in the long term. And I think there is huge value in that. I really do. Yes, by all means, do the long-term plans, but we don't want to see this road staying the same way it is for another 5 or 10 years. Just plain and simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murdoch and then Brownov.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can just put in a question to Mr. Finlow. Could you just jog my memory, if you have it at hand, on the Uptown Corridor study, and if this would be something that might properly fit within the context of that study?
Through the chair, yes, I think certainly that study embraces both the Douglas corridor and the Blanchard corridor within the study area. it will look at all aspects of the area, including mobility, land use, and the interrelationship between those things. So certainly that would be an appropriate venue to look at this. And as I say, it would put it in the context of land use changes that might occur and tie those visions together. It may not be, the results of that may not come as quickly as what Councillor Derman is hoping for, because that process is going to be a minimum 3-year process, I would think.
Thank you. I appreciate your thorough response, and your thinking is not dissimilar to mine in terms of the timeline and the expeditious nature of the requests, or desire of the requests we have in front of us. So, you know, look, I've looked at this and I was excited about it. I've heard Councilor Derman talk about this in the past. I think it makes a lot of sense. I tried to put myself in the perspective of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure employees, or the AVM, who have a look at this. And I think what I would want to know is the land use context. And I think that this, if it sort of comes in concert with what we expect we'll see from the Nigel Valley application, if there's a desire expressed from the community as part of that, the context of that study, you know, we're going to see further activity take place on the residential side at Uptown, I suspect, and perhaps we'll see, is it Saanich Plaza or Saanich Center that's in the middle of that? I always get those two names mixed up. Where the Save-On Foods is.
Plaza, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Plaza. I suspect we'll see some activity take place there in the not too distant future. So if I was in the position of staff at the ministry, you know, their primary concern is traffic flow. It seems to be going pretty well right now. So they're going to want to consider changes in the context of the broader land use. And I think that the elements there, at least from an application perspective, are not quite in place. So I commend Councillor Derman for bringing this forward. I'm very supportive of seeing a change like this. I agree that it's consistent with the values of this council and our municipality. But you know, from the ministry's perspective, the owner of that road, I think they're going to want to know the broader context of the change that we want to make there.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, we've been talking about Blanchard for a while, and now with the Nigel Valley, there's opportunities, but I think my colleague, Councillor Murdoch, just said it right on the head. It's not our road. And if anything, I wouldn't want our staff to spend a lot of time at this stage. I think just contacting the ministry to see if there's an appetite to look at some sort of design element on Blanchard in relationship to what they're looking at Nigel. But I agree. I think they're going to want to look at the bigger picture. And if we're gonna go to the ministry, I don't want to go with this little project and the bigger project and then the Nigel Valley. I want us to be concise. And I sure wouldn't want our staff, I would like to ask engineering, you know, the kind of time commitment. I mean, we've been trying to be very focused on the strategic plan. Recommendations from council goes to the strategic plan, and then we debate it there. You know, there's no urgency right now. I get that we want to do it, but there's all sorts of things around landscaping on ministry roads and things like that. So I'm having a real hard time even thinking of, and even the recommendation doesn't even mention the ministry. I mean, the recommendation is our engineering department, our advisory committees. It doesn't, you know, approach the province and request whatever changes are determined to be appropriate. Well, I think they'll determine what changes are appropriate on their road. But, you know, I'm willing for staff to we're talking to the ministry on Douglas Street with the bus lanes. I'm sure our staff are in contact with the ministry quite regularly. So I can't support this recommendation. I wouldn't mind a referral motion to the strategic plan process so that we can focus it more with the other work we're doing. With respect to Councillor Platt's idea about a public piece of artwork on that piece, I think it's a good one, and maybe the Arts and Heritage and Culture Committee could look at it. I'll just warn you that there were some people living in that area, so we just have to be, yeah. So, you know, these are all great ideas, but we really, really need to be very focused on when we go to the ministry for the ask, because we don't know what the ministry is planning either, so, and it's a very expensive, I know at one stage, Councillor Dermond wanted us to take Blanchard on. There's a lot of very expensive infrastructure we wouldn't want to take on that road. So I can't support this motion. I could move a referral motion to the strategic plan process so we can get it into the plan, working with the other plans we have on the go.
Thank you. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am a little surprised at some of the comments because, you know, we won't know if the ministry permits something until we ask them. Plain and simple. As I mentioned, tying it into the Nigel Valley, I think is a superb opportunity for the ministry to do something to do. Of course, there's going to be a larger planning process in this area. There has to be. But that's probably a minimum of 5 years and a maximum of 15 or 20 years down the road. I just don't think this road can wait that long for the kind of minor changes, and they are minor, that I'm actually suggesting. Just for council's information, before Uptown was built, in the hope that we could make it a bit more of an urban street, a bit more of an inviting street, I met with ministry officials out there, and there were 4 ministry officials. And the first comment that came from one of them was to say, "Holy man, we've got a lot of asphalt out here," referring to Vernon and Blanchard, and just expressing surprise at the nature of the road in the urban area. It wasn't me that brought up us taking it over. It was the ministry officials who said, you know, really, you guys should have this road, and we should be finished at the fire hall. And they actually wanted that. The ministry, I think, would be willing as long as the current through traffic lanes at this time are maintained to allow this to happen, I think. But you wouldn't find out until you asked. If it's preferable to people that we send it right to the ministry, that's fine. I thought it might be helpful to have perhaps Councillor Haynes' committee, the BIPED committee, any others comment on it, and engineering to talk about feasibility as well. That's all it's asking for at this time. Not for engineering to do a huge amount of work, simply to take a look and say, yes, this perhaps makes sense, or no, it doesn't, and if engineering came back and said this makes no sense, well, that's the end of it. But I just don't see wrapping it into some great, huge scheme or vision for the area. That's a very long-term process. Thank you.
Been through everybody. I'm going to lend my support to this. I think it's a good initiative. It seems like it's been on the back burner for a while. We need to put it on the front burner in whatever form we can. There are a lot of different ways of getting this forward, and I think we'll just let the fall where the vote falls on moving that forward. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? We have Councillors Murdoch, Sanders, Bryce, and Brav opposed. And so we have 1, 2, 3, it's 4 and 4, so it fails on a tie, unfortunately. Councillor Plant.
Procedurally, are we allowed to refer this to the strategic planning at this point, or is it not called a referral once it's defeated?
Oh.
It has been defeated, but you can put a new motion for it.
Okay, I would suggest that this be referred to the strategic planning session that council undertakes, or the next, excuse me.
Second.
Is that enough detail, Madam Clerk? Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. All right. Next item, please, Madam Clerk. We're on G2.
This is a report from Mayor Atwell dated February 18th, recommending that Council endorse the resolution as outlined in the report for consideration of the 2016 Convention of the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities to urge the provincial government to enact a strong and effective British Columbians with Disabilities Act that incorporates the principles advocated for by Barrier-Free BC.
Put that on the floor for you. Move it for you.
All right, moved by I take from Councillor Haynes, and I'll take a second from Councillor Bryce. Thank you. I'll just introduce it briefly. I had a very interesting meeting down at City of Victoria. Jeremy Loveday was there. I tried to outline some of that in my report. I think what I neglected to put in the report in the beginning was I had the meeting for the purpose of talking about this Barrier-Free BC. It was a very passionate group of people. Everybody in the attendance, other than myself and Councillor Loveday, had some sort of vision impairment. And they spoke greatly about a number of different issues, some of which that we're very liking, such as changes that we make to crossings and where we've done the curb cuts for the wheelchairs. But they're now finding that they're having trouble with the sticks, finding where the edges are, and those kinds of things. And so they've collaborated and launched in November this Barrier-Free BC organization. They've written a number of letters to the Premier already, and they're wrapping up their campaign of some kind. So I thought it was very interesting, and I promised them that I would bring it to this council for council's consideration, that we send this on to AVICC and along to try to raise awareness of this campaign. Councilor Brownhoff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this. Obviously support it. I think one of the things I would really like to highlight is some of the initiatives that Saanich has on the books. We've actually developed a number of policies. The pedestrian crossing lights, we work with CNIB for them to give us a priority of what lights need the twitter, or the twerp, whatever the sound is. We also have worked with seniors in the Shelbourne area around timing of the pedestrian light. We were working, and I'm sure we still are, with tactile at corners and what that will entail. We also did a really neat transit study, and it was focused on the physical environment from door to transit, and from transit to destination. So not about more service, it was really about how do we get from our house to the transit stop. And so what you see in that are a number of initiatives that staff have been implementing. Our bus stops are barrier-free now, and the seating has arms on it so people can get out. It really also talked about safe drop-offs at businesses so people could get in safely. Another one that council may not be aware of is we do have an employment equity policy, and it's designated for women, visible minorities, Aboriginal, and persons with disabilities. And so we have that policy. It's been on the books for a number of years, and it's really to support employment opportunities within the district. Also, when we were looking at housing, Saanich was the first to kind of adopt an adaptable housing process. The reason I'm saying all this, Mr. Mayor, is your report, which I support, is based provincially. But I want to say that municipalities have the opportunity to implement various barrier-free, like Saanich has. So the adaptable housing program, which is based on visitability, we have over 800 units like that in Saanich, all multifamily. The Gyro Cabaret Bay Park, that was all based on universal access and barrier-free, the new park there. And of course, Saanich is recognized as an age-friendly city. We were the provincial designate through the WHO project. And there are 8 domains, and we've been involved with that. So I just want to say that Saanich departments continue to ensure that through their work, we look at barrier-free, age-friendly, the term accessibility all comes to mind as well. So I support the motion, but I do want to reiterate that municipalities have the opportunity through their own operations and programming to create barrier-free instances in everything we do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haynes?
I'm pleased to see the motion come forward, and I'll support it, of course. But I do reflect on what Councillor Brownhoff says, that we've shown many areas of leadership already, and you can go and look at our website any time and see some of the things that we're doing. But it's important to continue that work, and I see this motion as doing that, and I think we agree to that. and I commend the Mayor for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Councillor Durham.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I thank you for bringing this forward, and I'll certainly support it.
Thank you. Any more? All right, I won't repeat what is already in the report. I thank you for putting this on the floor, and we'll proceed with the vote. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? That carries unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, could I put another motion on the floor?
Absolutely.
I'd like to move that Saanich continues its commitment in working towards an age-friendly and barrier-free municipality. I think that's a statement that we can continue to push.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Councillor. All right, with that, we're going to move on to the last item of the council agenda, which is the Capital Regional District Activities Update. I'm going to go from my right to left, and we'll start with Councillor Brown. When you're ready.
I'm ready. Just have to pull up the other iPad. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I sit on a few committees at the CRD. I'm going to report out on CRD Parks. At the Parks Committee, we approved that the draft management plan for Island View Beach be received for information, and it will now be referred out to member municipalities, First Nation, other level of government stakeholders, and the public for review and comment. It should be noted that there are a number of studies still to happen as part of it. We have passionate people with dogs, and part of the plan calls for a dog study. We have passionate people with horses. We have passionate environmentalists. So there are a number of other studies that will happen as ongoing with the plan, but the plan now, the draft is being referred out. We also, I just want to report that we did approve a grant application to Bike BC for the Halliwell Road to Maple Bank Road project area of the ENN Trail and Humpback Connector. We also, the Thetis Lake Pistol Range, members might not be aware of it, but this was a range that was used by different forces, and it had a lot of lead embedded in the ground there. So that has now been cleaned up, and it's to the credit of CRD Parks putting that investment both financially and time commitment. And the other thing I think which is really exciting is the whole concept of planning for regional trails on Southern Gulf Islands and Salt Spring Island. Our colleagues from the islands are very keen on economic development through cycling and getting what they call experience the Gulf Islands. So we've supported that, and I think that's all I'll say. On parks, and then the other one I'll just raise is planning, transportation, and there's a third type.
Protective services.
Yeah, protective services. Yeah, the regional growth strategy, we'll be receiving a draft of that again. That'll come to us this week, and we'll see what the debate is at the committee. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor, has CNB staff given the committee any idea when the draft report will be coming to the municipalities?
On
The draft?
Island View?
Island View Beach, yes.
Well, I think it can go with the committee's approved it, so it probably goes, I'm not sure if it would go to the board for approval to referral out, and then it'll go out.
Okay, so there may be a referral. Is there a plan for CRD to come and present here? I know we've got a lot of passionate dog owners here in Saanich making use of that park.
Dog owners are definitely a loud local group. But I can tell you, in other jurisdictions in the province, Mr. Mayor, like in Penticton, when I was there, they have this wonderful dog fenced-off area, quite large, but it goes into the water. And so what people do, it's kind of like dog socialization. They open the gate, your dogs go in, they play with the other dogs, they swim in the water, and they have a great time. So I know at Island View they're looking at, is there sections within the park that can be dog-only, off-leash.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Councillor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm on the CRD board as our other directors from this council. I'm chair of the Environment Committee at the present time. The Environment Committee has been tasked by the CRD chair to approach the issue of climate change and to bring an ambitious plan to the board ultimately as to what CRD might do to try to deal with that. Another significant issue that's facing the Environment Committee is the issue of glass in the recycling boxes. And the owners of the recycling depot just up here on Quadra and others in the region have come forward saying that there are problems with the issue of glass in that. We were going to be considering that next week, but at the request of the core area, the February meeting of the Environment Committee has been canceled, so the core area can have extra time for considering the issues that are in front of us. I'm also chair of the Integrated Waste Management Task Force on the waste streams at the CRD. We initiated it in the middle of, well, actually about the 12th of January. Since that time, we have met with 4 potential providers for hour-long presentations and discussions. Potential providers either of technologies or of an integrated waste management approach to our waste streams. We had a presentation from Dr. John O'Riordan, who is a former Deputy Minister of the Environment, and also a current consultant on integrated resource management approach to waste. We have created a report that will be going to the Core Area Liquid Waste Committee on February 24th, which will give them a sense of what we have found so far. And I think generally what the task force has come to the conclusion that integrated waste management approaches to our waste streams are probably real, very likely are,